This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December Board of Finance meeting. I'm Mike Frieda, North Haven's first selectman. As part of this Board of Finance and as part of the role of the first selectman of North Haven, it's at this time of year, every 2 years after our election cycle, that I go around to the town and visit with each and every board and commission and ask for an election of officers, a hierarchy in each commission. So tonight is the fourth meeting I've been at. Throughout the balance of this month and throughout the month of January, I will be visiting all of the elected boards and commissions, and I'll be visiting all of the appointed boards and commissions. So before we get started with our Board of Finance meeting tonight, I have 3 orders of business before this actual business meeting starts. And the first order of business is to ask for nominations and elect the chairperson for this board. The second order of business I have is to ask for a nomination for the vice chair. And then the third and last order of business before we start our meeting is to ask for nominations and elect the secretary of our Board of Finance. So without further ado, I'd like to start by asking for nominations or a nomination for the chairperson of our Board of Finance.
Mr. Frieda, I'd like to nominate Mr. Monaco.
Okay, we have a nomination for Mr. Monaco. Is there a second on that nomination?
Second.
We have a nomination and a second. Is there any discussion? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chairman, for agreeing to continue to serve this Board of Finance as the chairman of this Board of Finance. Second order of business is to ask for a nomination for the vice chair for this board. Is there a nomination?
I nominate Tim Donahue for Vice Chair, Board of Finance.
Is there a second on that nomination?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion for Mr. Doheny as the vice chair. We have a second. Is there any other discussion?
Could he please state his qualifications?
I would object on the basis they're too numerous to time allotted.
Good answer.
All right.
Is there any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Doheny, for continuing to serve, and I believe you and Mr. Hallahan are the longest-serving members of this Board of Finance, along with Mr. Monaco. So, in fact, Rich, you may have 14 years now, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think I'm starting at 13. Michael's
13.
a couple years. Michael's 14.
Michael's 14. So, a segue into the last order of business, ask for a nomination for the secretary of this Board of Finance.
I nominate Michael Hallahan.
All right, we have a nomination for Mr. Hallahan. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And we have a second. I don't think we need to ask Mr. Hallahan for his qualifications. We just heard he's the longest-standing member of this board, and a member in good standing also.
The seniority here that I have, that and 25 cents will not get you a cup of coffee anywhere in town.
All right, a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Any other nominations? All right, hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Michael, thank you again for agreeing to stay on and be our secretary of this board. Thank you.
All right, as long as we have errors and omissions insurance, we should be fine.
I'd like to continue with our regular meeting, December 18th, Board of Finance. First order of business, minutes of our regular meeting from November 20th. Everyone's had a chance to look at it, review it. Any questions or comments?
No, I want to thank Madam Ellen for making some suggested edits to it.
Wait, I will interject one thing. I'm sorry, I apologize. I'd like to introduce Nancy Barrett to the members of the board and the public. A little out of sequence, because usually I have other things to do before I get to the minutes.
That's okay. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to serving with you all.
We welcome you on this board, Nancy.
Thank you very much.
Can I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I have to abstain.
Nothing on the old business. Expenditures?
Actually, I have a quick question regarding old business.
Sure.
Since I was not a member of this board last month when the presentation was made in executive session regarding the $2 million school security resolution, I'm just wondering, how is it that I can actually obtain that information or receive a private presentation regarding the
It's no longer part of this board's process. The board has moved it along. The next set of information is at the town meeting, when it's presented to the public.
So let me also comment, Nancy, there was actually no formal presentation in terms of a PowerPoint. It was a larger discussion in terms of some of the upgrades that the IT director has presented to Patrick Stirk and us. And when we go to the public meeting, and Valerie's already scheduling the public meeting, there will be a presentation on it. Now, because it's school security, because some of the upgrades have to remain not public, because in any school security, to reveal all the details, there
Right.
could be someone out there that could exploit those details.
Sure.
So this Board of Finance that does not have a leave-behind paper presentation or PowerPoint. They heard an update in general. And so to Rich's point, at that town meeting, there will be a presentation. So in other words, there's nothing really to pass out because we don't
No,
have...
no. I'm just wondering, could I schedule a private meeting perhaps with the IT director, who I assume is the person that gave the presentation? And I'm-
There were a number of people that made the presentation, but I mean, as a point of order, it's beyond our board right now. It's no longer within our purview to do anything else. We've acted on it, just like if it was something from a year ago, 2 years ago. We've acted on it, and especially that it was done in an executive session. I don't think there's a way of going back. We can ask counsel, but I don't think there's a way.
Yeah, I think even at the public meeting, there probably won't be full disclosure on the
No,
details.
so the presentation to the public will be different from the one that was presented to the Board of
To
Finance.
the board, but there's nothing else for the Board of Finance to act on unless it got rejected. If it was rejected and they came back and made a different presentation to us, then of course you would be part of that executive session.
Well, I'll tell you what we can do.
It's past our
I'll
board.
tell you what we can do. We can certainly ask Ed if Mrs. Barrett can meet with Jen and just get an overview. There won't be any presentation.
No,
given,
of
but,
course,
Let's try to work on that.
That would
okay?
be wonderful,
All right.
excellent, because
Do you mind if I interject for just a second? I think before you do that, we should ask
Yeah.
Jen if that's okay, because it just strikes me that we have executive session for a certain reason, right? And we had executive session, and we discussed this one, and now what we're saying is we're going to bring in someone who obviously is a member of the board now,
Yes.
but was not last month when the discussion, so you're bringing in someone who, at least at the time, was not on the board. So I'm okay with it, as long as our town council says it's
Yeah, and
okay.
he's talking about the other Jen Capola, the attorney. So we'll do that. We'll check that. Right.
okay, I wasn't
So
sure which
there's
Jen
two-
you
there's
meant.
two-
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
so, yes.
Right.
Jen Capola.
Right,
we'll
so
do it- we'll
if
do
she
it
says
that
it's
way.
okay, I'm fine, but I just think we should check with her first.
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll do it that way.
Because, again, technically, it's past this board. We no longer have any action to take on the matter.
Right.
And I would
Unless-
point out that if she meets privately with someone, she's not an Nancy, by the way, she's not in executive session. She's not bound by the same rules that we were.
Right.
So I think we should ask.
We'll ask, and we will let you know, Nancy.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you very much.
A good point, Tim.
Expenditures.
I couldn't find anything.
You want to get started?
Again, when expenditures are paid for out of the MRSA funds, is there a corresponding decrease in the line item in our regular expenditure budget
At the end of the year.
at the end of the year? Yeah.
All I'm doing in this budget is, on the revenue side, is tracking what we're spending, so you know how much it is.
Okay, yeah. The only thing I noticed
Which
is...
page, Michael?
On page 12, and I think we discussed this before, because I think it had to do with recyclables and not tipping fees, which is a different line. The transportation hauling line, of course, is going to, we're going to be going over on that. And again, was that for transfer station items, or was that for recyclables?
What's the line item number?
That's
Yeah.
Third one down.
It's the third one down.
Yeah, that's that
transportation
encumbrance I
hauling?
put in for John's refuse.
Yeah. So that's in there.
90,000.
Then encumbrance is in there for, again, for what subs?
I'm trying to estimate what it's going to be for the rest of the year.
Yeah, okay. And again, that line had to do with the recyclables or transfer station or both? Okay, it's one of those. Thank you. Okay. All right.
You can get back to it.
Thank you.
Ed, I guess similarly, just on the same page, the tipping fees were 100,000 in just 1 month? Or was that accumulation of bills there on page 12 as well?
Good point.
That's a catch-up, Tim, because we're not even 40% yet.
No, we're not. Okay.
So if the bills come late, sometimes I take them in
Yeah,
for the month,
okay.
so. I try to get them encumbered every month, but
Right.
sometimes they get,
We don't mind being billed late, it's okay.
no, I don't pay them, never early.
Anything else on expenditures?
Yeah, I just had two quick questions. On page 7, I guess it's 5 lines down, under central facilities, it says maintenance and repairs, town building. So Ed, could you just explain to me how that particular line item, year-to-date expended $95,000, how is that different? Well, first of all, what does that refer to it? What does that refer to? And secondly, how does that differ from the building maintenance and repair line items for individual departments like library, animal control, fire, transfer station, sanitation, streets and roads, senior center, and rec center, that each have their own specific line item for maintenance, repairs, and for town
Right, well, a
building?
lot of this money ends up being for the annex across the way.
Uh-huh.
I know we had a lot of work was done on the boiler over there.
Yeah.
In Town Hall, we had to change out an air conditioning system because after 25 or 30 years, it was shot. There was some other work done on boilers and some other buildings, not necessarily the other departments, but.
I see. So under
The
central
rest of the town buildings
facilities,
that aren't fire and police,
right, so central facilities, annex,
catch-all.
and the town hall. Anything else?
Outbuildings at the town
There-
owns.
yeah.
Why don't you send, Ellen, you sent us out the list of town buildings last month? Yeah.
Oh, that would be great.
Oh, Mike's got it?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, okay, yeah, I haven't seen that.
So it would be,
Okay,
you got another one, Nancy?
that would be great. Yes, I had one other question. On page 14, it said track and field facility maintenance for $80,868. I'm just wondering, what exactly is that referring to? Because again, that's year-to-date plus encumbrance.
Okay, I'm sorry, what page was that?
Sorry, page 14.
14, yeah.
Track and field facility maintenance.
Right.
Originally appropriated $67,000, and we're at 120% because we've spent $47,000, and we have an encumbrance for almost $34,000.
Yeah.
So what is that?
That encumbrance could be incorrect because after I sent out these reports, I was looking at 1 or 2 items that they didn't relieve the encumbrance when they paid the bill. So that'll have to, some of these things will have to be adjusted. That and one other one I looked at.
So it's not that it's been resurfaced or repaired?
No, nothing
Okay,
like that.
so I just wondered, all right, I just wanted to check on that. Thank you.
Anything else on expenditures? Revenue?
Revenue, page 2. 2 things. The building fees. Are we going to meet our goal, or are we overly zealous in picking these numbers?
Where's that?
Hoping we make that.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, yeah, here it is.
It's the winter, so it probably slows down, if I pick up a lot in the spring, early in the year. It is seasonal.
Yeah.
Because did they even break ground on the hotel yet? They just are starting to?
broke
Well, they just
ground.
started to, yeah.
So there may be a bunch of fees coming in for that one.
Yeah, look, this is about 800,000 to 900,000 or more. than we've ever delivered in the past, going back a couple of years. So we have a lot of economic development in town, a lot coming, a lot more projects I'll be bringing forward. So we're 35% of the line versus 40, 50% of the year elapsed. Spring is always a big time for permits, so I'm confident, and we'll see how it goes. So we have a lot of projects coming forward, so.
Okay. The line item right below it, refresh my memory. Fire fees. Is this for inspections?
No, let me explain this, okay?
It's
Because
very
this is
confusing.
one of and I'm going to try to explain this as clearly as possible. There's two forms of reviews by the fire department. One is the inspections to get up to compliance with a state statute. In other words, the fire department goes out and inspects buildings. 2 years ago, they inspected a building that was deficient on sprinkler systems, and they put a plan in motion to have that business get into compliance. That's one thing. These fees are for plan reviews. They're done when businesses come in and the fire department has to review the plans for, to see if codes are up to specifications, as an example. That's where the revenue comes in. There's no revenue for inspections of businesses and buildings. That is separate. That is to get, again, be in compliance with a state statute. Why is that state statute important? It's important because, God forbid, there's a fire in town, and the town had not had a series of regular inspections. The town could be held liable for not doing its job inspecting buildings over the course of the year. This happened in the city of Stamford a few years ago. The town was held responsible because they weren't doing the inspections. So that's what that is, Jim. This fee is not inspections. This fee is generated from plan reviews.
Okay.
That's what that is, okay? Think in terms of two models. Inspections, fire marshal, chief does some, fire marshal, the Jim does a lot, and then the plan reviews that DJ Marcarelli does, our other fire, the deputy chief. He is reviewing the plans, and that's where the revenue comes from.
Okay.
I hope that clears that up.
Yeah, thank you.
Ed, any comments on that?
No, that's what I was
Okay.
So why don't we charge for inspection?
Well, you know, there's no provision in the statute that says we can charge for inspections. Nobody charges for inspections. Others charge for plan reviews. So, in other words, if there's a house that a fire department went out and checked, we're not going to charge the residents for that inspection fee. That's part of it. That's part of their overall taxes. So,
Plus, I think with the inspection, they won't want you in there, they have to pay for it. Some of them don't want you in there anyway.
They're not paying for it.
But we, if they were out of compliance, we do charge fees, right?
no, not to my knowledge. No,
No?
if they're out of compliance, they get a letter, they're put on notice, and they have 30, 60, or 90 days to,
Right, okay.
to affect the remedy.
Right.
I would assume there must be a penalty structure after that if they don't do the repair. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that once someone gets a letter from a fire marshal to say you're deficient in A, B, or C area, you know, that gets people's attention. So,
Okay, thanks.
okay.
Okay, I have a question on the paramedics services line. That's running way low, and this line, I had brought it up last year. We didn't make that, so how do we feel about that number? Seems a little aggressive in light of what it looks like where we are.
I think it all depends, Diane, on our success with the collection agencies and getting outstanding collections that are out there. We're not sure yet of that.
Do we have a list of receivables, Ed?
I could get that from the fire chief.
That might help, I think.
Yeah, that
Maybe
would be
have that
good to see.
circulated.
Okay, thank you.
Special funds?
Oh, wait,
You got something on revenue, Michael?
well, on revenue, just in an overall sense here, I was trying to look at this almost halfway point in the year for the upsides and the downsides. Because usually by the end of the year, when we run a slight surplus, we are surprised on the upside in one respect or another. Sometimes it's the fire and fees that are associated with Amazon, and sometimes it's a little unexpected extra money from the state where we were once conservative. And at this moment, I'm looking, especially in the whole state section where the bonding hasn't taken place yet. There's nothing to make us feel extremely optimistic. But in the town revenue area here, of course, we do have some higher than expected town clerk fees that have come in this year. But overall, the building fees, do you think that having a revenue of building fees of $511,000 at this point in the year, that we're going to meet our budgeted belief that we were going to get $1.45 million?
Well, I just answered that question. I just said that, the spring is a big time for economic development permits to come in. I'm confident we can make it, but even if we fall short, I do believe the overall revenue figures are going to be there at the end of the year. We have a strong tax collection rate. Our interest income with the investments that we reconfigured, our interest income is growing. So I'm not so much worried about an individual line item, because we're going to get close on that. We look at the overall revenue, and I'm confident that we're going to deliver the revenue this year. I'm confident we're going to balance another budget, and I'm confident we'll yield us another small surplus.
Yeah, well, certainly, adjustments can be made on the expense
Yes,
side.
absolutely, right.
Special funds?
Oh, wait, I have actually two points on the revenue. On page 2, Ed, could you just explain to me, since this is my first night, what is the town miscellaneous receipts, which is up in the very first section on page 2? We have an estimated revenue of $250,000. I'm just wondering what's generally in that category, because we have lots of other things that are specifically
That goes
listed.
Anywhere from vendor refunds, money that some of the money that comes back on insurance that might be above what we set aside or we paid out on a particular claim. And just a lot of other little things.
Okay. So kind of a catch-all category.
Just a catch-all.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And one other quick question. I was just wondering, again, looking back on the first page, the bottom, MRSA bonded distribution. Again, we've predicted a MRSA revenue of $1.445 million. And of course, we haven't received that because we won't receive it until much later in the year, which is the normal pattern. So basically, there's no connection between that first column number, 1.445 million, and then both the year-to-date and the month-to-date revenue, which are really expenditures, right? We're keeping track of what we're spending the MRSA money on.
Correct.
But really, you're not drawing from the 1.445 million. What you're drawing from is the balance in that special fund, which is 989,000. Is that correct?
That's where it would go, right?
That's kind of what we're doing. And then at the end of the year,
Right,
we
rather than do it every
basically
month, it'd be chaos.
move it all around. Right. So I was just wondering if there's any way to get a monthly list of what are the general projects and services that we're paying, that are being used, that we're using this money, this $1 million to pay. That's what that list is? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's in your packet.
Yeah,
It's in the last,
legal
that's
pay-
the last page, municipal grants in the last page? Okay. And again, since we're paying it down from the $1 million that we have as the balance in the account, that percentage, the 17.9%, I mean, at the current moment, that's not the current percentage, because it really should be as a percentage of our balance in the MRSA fund, which is $1 million, not 1.4 million,
Yeah,
correct?
what I'm just trying to do, like I said, this is strictly a placeholder at this point.
Sure, no, I understand.
So at the end of the year, it'll be swept and charged to the MRSA fund.
Right.
And that's where the $1.4 million will go, and they'll offset in that fund.
Right, but we can't spend 1.4 million when we only have $1 million.
No,
in
right
there.
now on hand, I started you with 900, and that's what I'm working on.
Right, so,
So let me just tie into that,
clarify.
Nancy. So Ed and I are working off a balance of 989,000 roughly. And the projects, we were reviewing this the other day. We are looking at each and every project that would tie into MRSA. We had already encumbered money for those projects, and now we are reconciling the encumbrances with the actual dollars as the work is being completed. That's what we did the other day, Ed. Again, working off the balance of 989.
right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on revenue? Special funds? And Board of Ed.
Yeah, Board of Ed,
We got something else.
we requested a new format 2 months ago. A little more easier to read. Have we seen anything from that, Ed?
I asked. That's all I can do.
All right. Also, 2 months ago, we requested through Mr. Hallahan about an audit for the transportation bus. Has that been instituted?
Is that still in progress?
No, the last person I asked wasn't enough money for him, so I'll try
Okay.
some more people.
Okay.
Thank you.
As long as it's on your to-do list. Yeah.
What about a smaller firm that might be here in town, Ed?
Yeah,
Maybe that might be more attractive to them.
Yeah, I just tried to ask a bunch of local firms for
Right.
a small audit for ACES.
Yeah.
And really got no response on it, but I'll try this and see if they're applicable to this.
Right.
So, of course, the Board of Ed here, every year, I think, when they're concerned about balancing their budget, which they have to do, one of the biggest variables is in-district versus out-of-district placement of special ed folks, and the payment of tuition for that, both special ed, I think, and non-special ed, right? So, of course, the notice, we're being given here is that, from the superintendent, is that it's a big concern at the moment. And they are trying to mitigate or overcome or find some ways to make their budgeted figures work. But with the encumbrance listed in the budget here that they gave us, they're showing a deficit in that account of over $600,000. Now, I don't know if that's before or after any sort of offset with the grants that the state gives us. Do you have any other insight into how serious that figure is?
I'm sure the expenditures are accurate, but I doubt that any revenue offset is in that at this time.
Right. So
there probably
additional expenditures associated with that then is in what I would call a separate budget that is for the use of those state grants.
No, not
Yeah.
this time.
Well, the state grant money goes to something, and then so again, we see the warning here, and it's concerning to him and it's concerning to me because that's not a small figure.
I think that what they do, I might be wrong, is don't they take the grant and offset the expense? Isn't that what they do?
Right, but I don't think that's been offset yet.
No, because the money hasn't come in yet, right?
Right.
Is that what you're asking?
I'm asking whether the additional, the true expense for that line item is actually larger than it shows in that line item, because usually what we receive in a budget from them is what the town is responsible for paying. There's never been any grant money, aside from ECA, that offsets the line items that we get.
They have other grants. I'm
I know.
actually working on that
Right.
with the Board of Ed right now, because there's about 7 or 8 of them, which some have money, some have deficits, and I'm trying to get them to resolve those issues. But what I've noticed in the larger ones is that a lot of the money has not come in yet,
Yes.
so.
But again, that's a separate expenditure budget that's just for those funds that we never see.
Correct.
That's my point.
Michael, this is one of the biggest dilemmas in cities and towns all over the state of Connecticut. We're talking about this at a state level. The growing needs of special ed students and the in-placement, out-placement of students, and the pressure that very poignant development is having on predictability of Board of Ed budgets. It happened once here years ago. We had to go to a special meeting to appropriate funds to equalize the difference between the special ed costs that were unpredicted versus what the expenses the revenue was. So it's a issue that all of us across the state look on with a great deal of compassion because there's a growing need for special ed more and more. And again, I want everyone to understand what that really means. It creates an unpredictability model on special ed costs in many cities and towns across the state of Connecticut. So Michael, it's something Ed and I were just talking about yesterday. We will be meeting again with Pam Mangini and Patrick Stirk to get an idea as to what, if there is a deficit, what that deficit may be.
Can we get a list of the enrollment by school and including special ed? We typically get it at budget time, but we've asked for it in the past and we haven't gotten it. So it'd be nice if we could see the numbers maybe from the last school year, 2018 to 2019, so we could see the comparison. He's saying that, but it would be nice to know. And with those special ed, a lot of times there's aides that are with
Right.
special ed. So here, we don't know these aides if they're with the special ed or they're doing other activities. I don't know if they have that breakout, but that would be nice to have for the next meeting, so we could at least see the numbers and kind of get an idea of what we're up against.
Or better yet, we'd like to get them for the workshop. If we can
Well, let
have
me
them,
start working on it now, this week, maybe. I'll have it
yeah,
all
so we
set
can
by-
have it for the workshop.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, what this
usually
letter
don't.
doesn't
That's what I'm
say,
saying, if we can get it.
Now, that's what I'm asking, could we
Yeah.
get it now?
Because
The students,
next month
no,
will be
she's,
the workshop.
Ellen's got it. She'll get it sooner than later.
What this letter doesn't say, they say that in-district special ed costs are also creating a substantial deficit in our current budget. Unlike the out-of-district where they said we got 3 extra students, they don't say why here. So do we have more in-district special ed students, or is the cost higher for some reason?
Well,
So
we get that.
maybe,
It'll shed some light on it.
And then in addition to that, we also have the cumulative effect of both non-budgeted and under-budgeted accounts. So I think it's the combination of the entire special ed unpredictability combined with their discovery shortly after the referendum that there were non-budgeted and under-budgeted accounts that I think is leading to some concern here about the largest portion of our budget.
right, he doesn't have as much to borrow from other accounts in the shifting of money.
Right.
I guess that brings me to my last question, which is, are they preparing us for a request later on, or are they just warning us?
That's the question.
But are we sending the message, or they understand they still have to meet their budgets?
So let me answer that. So at this point, their goal is to meet the current fiscal year budget. And we're trying to guide them on how to get there, Ed and I. What this could mean is, in the carryover costs for next school season after July, we could have a unanticipated incremental request for special ed beyond what the normal Board of Ed increase would be. That's where I see impact. But let me just be clear, there's a potential impact this fiscal year, and Ed and I are working with Patrick and Pam on that.
Right.
So,
Trying to quantify all those
Right.
issues right now.
so we'll probably have more of an update on this in the January meeting.
Excellent.
Any other questions or comments from Board of Ed? Can I have a motion to accept the reports as presented?
Make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Appointment of one member, Open Space Advisory Committee. Do I have any nominations for a member?
Well, I realize our first selectman is always buried, but I'll throw another brick on his back. I nominate Mike Frieda.
I'll second the nomination.
Look, those are the nominations, let me just say that. It's not going to be anything more for me to do that. You know, Lynn and I talk on a regular basis, Steve Fitzgerald, the chairman, so I'll be more than happy to do it because I'm dealing with it every day anyway. Ed and I we had a meeting on open space in terms of reconciling the account the other day where we are. We have one transaction in motion, the Yates property that has been approved. We have a balance left, and so I've been more than happy to do it because I'm doing it anyway.
Thank you. I mean, usually whoever doesn't show up to the meeting is the person that usually gets nominated for it.
Or it's late, you know.
Or is late.
Or is late.
If there's no other questions or comments,
Sorry, the nominations did not happen while I was gone.
That's right.
if there are no other questions or comments, We have a motion, it's been seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
He doesn't have to ask anyone at home whether he can take on another job.
Before we move to public comment, I'd like to congratulate our first selectman for being named president of the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. Talk about even more things to do, but it gets North Haven more at the table for things happening in Hartford.
Well, thank you. Governor Lamont called me the other day to congratulate me and said, Mike, I'm really looking forward to working with you, work across the party lines. And I think that we have a lot to do, me representing North Haven on this statewide platform, in terms of changing the image of the state of Connecticut. As the governor said to me, he said, I don't know how you're bringing all these new businesses in, Mike, but we need more of this in the state of Connecticut. So I think there's an opportunity to showcase North Haven in terms of what we've been doing here in economic development. And I think there's a real opportunity to change what could be a negative image all across the state of Connecticut about the business environment. My experience is in dealing with all the businesses in North Haven. And I have to leave here by about 10 of 8 because I'm going to an event tonight that has all the major businesses attending over at Anthony's Ocean View. So businesses want hope, inspiration. They want to know that there's a positive outlook. Businesses like predictability in the mill rate model. Businesses don't like the instability of knowing is there going to be high taxes, what's going to be the tax rate next year. And we've been able to really work well with the businesses here. And I'm hoping, if nothing else, one of the things we can accomplish this coming year is to create a stability and a predictability in the taxation system in Connecticut in an effort to keep people here, to prevent a migration out of our youth that are leaving, and to prevent a migration out of people who are maybe later in their work careers or retiring that want to move out of Connecticut because of the unpredictability of what the tax model is here. And that's going to be a big initiative of mine, working and representing North Haven on this Connecticut Conference of Municipalities.
Thank you, sir. Board members have anything? Public?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah. I just, it is Christmas time, so in the spirit of Christmas, I just wanted to ask the chairman for a favor regarding the newly adopted policy regarding public comment. Is there a chance that you could either lightly enforce or non-enforce it for a period of time to see how it goes? Because it seems that if any citizen is making a meaningful contribution to the discussion here and to our board, that any time limit would be sort of contrary to our sense of purpose and to the openness and accountability that we want. So I'm just asking you to put on your Santa hat and just be generous and allow the folks to say and to speak to a point where we believe it's reasonable, no matter what that time, whatever the clock may show.
Well, I have to say, the last part of what you just said concerns me, but it's Mr. Monaco's question.
I mean, as long as it's relevant, non-repetitive, and I think you'd ask for succinctness, for some sort of brevity. But as long as that happens, with 400 line items to our budget over the next few months, I could see someone speaking as 5 minutes and 5 minutes and still have questions or comments regarding
Well, again, it's public
the
comment.
whole process.
It's public comment. It's not questions and answers.
Yes.
I will say this.
Well, even though I
In the
don't agree with
last
it.
10 years I've been chairman, we've pretty much, people went for as long as they wanted to go. We answered questions to the best of our ability. And that,
Okay.
while not always being in the best interest of this board, because a lot of questions had nothing to do with this board, and it was hard to instill in people that this is the wrong place to be talking or asking those questions. Put that aside for a second, which kind of really pushed me in the direction I went, is that questions were being asked that were not related to our agenda, could have been about items from months ago. And our finance director would make an attempt, in the best of his knowledge and memory, to answer those questions. And then a month later, when the answer was slightly different, they would infer that he was trying to mislead. And that kind
Yeah.
of was the line in the sand that
Yeah.
got me to where I am.
Yeah.
I'm not going to treat this as questions, open questions and answer. Not to say that if someone didn't ask a question related to our current agenda, we wouldn't do our best to answer the question for them.
Right. Okay, well.
But I'm not going to answer questions or have him answer questions off the cuff, from memory,
Of
and then
course.
be accused of misleading.
Yes.
That's not going to happen anymore.
And right. And we
And
don't- we don't
in
want that to happen.
reality,
I agree.
anyone that has a comment to make should be able to do it in a reasonable amount of time.
Yes.
There are people that are in this audience, actually, that are not here today, but there's been people in this audience that came up to me after meetings and complained that they didn't have a chance to speak because other people went longer than I probably should have allowed. And again, remember, this is a business meeting for the Board of Finance. This isn't, we have 2 meetings a year, one that the town does and one that the Board of Finance does, that goes for hours, that is strictly public comment, strictly to talk about our budget. That is your opportunity. There's nothing, that's when you have the most impact on the budget, is during those times. You're not having, the budget's complete. There's no impact to this budget in public comment now. And again, I have no problem in answering a question that's current to something we're talking about. But I do have a problem, and I won't allow the finance director to try and answer a question where he's not positive of the answer
Right.
and
he
then be
should-
accused
right,
of something.
Right, he should not, he
So-
should, yes.
Yeah, so that's why it's not question and answers, and it is public comment. And we'll make the determination by their public comment if we want to respond to it or not.
All right, well, it's my feeling that a comment could be in the form of a question, but.
It could be,
Yeah.
again, if it's related to this agenda, I would expect that this board would probably respond to it.
Yeah.
But if it's not in relation to this agenda,
Oh, right,
and are not
I know.
something that this board is privy to,
Okay.
be it, the
Yeah.
fire commission or the police commission,
okay,
those are where, or Board of Ed, those are where those questions should be asked.
okay. So, thank you for lightly enforcing whatever policy there was.
Anything else from board members? Public comment. 3 hands are up. Closest one to the mic first. Mary?
Mary White, Summer Lane. For the record, I did time myself. I am less than 5 minutes. Actually, I'm less than 4 minutes. And you answered some of my questions, and so it's probably even less than that. So I was confused about public comment during public comment at Board of Finance meetings, because as the chair had just said, public comment is for public comment. But as a taxpayer and as a town resident for 29 years, I feel like I should be able to ask questions. So I'm understanding that I can ask questions.
Yes.
And the board or the chair will decide whether or not you'll answer those questions. But I'm able to ask questions, as long as they're like Board of Finance questions.
You can pretty much say whatever you want. I'm not going to restrict what you can say.
Okay. But if I have questions that can only be answered here in
If
front
it's-
of this board, I can ask those questions, and you'll decide whether or not you'll answer them.
Of course.
Okay. So the first question I have is, do we know what the fund balance is?
8, are we roughly 8%?
Or, yeah, 8 to 8.1.
8.1% roughly?
Okay. I have a revenue question. When did the town receive the voluntary payment from Quinnipiac University? Do we know?
Earlier this year.
Earlier? Do we know?
Not in this fiscal year.
No, not in this
Not in this
Oh,
fiscal
you're
year.
talking about this fiscal year? Okay, we always get the payment every March or April or late April and early May.
Okay, so we already received it?
No.
No.
We did not receive it?
We're not gonna receive it
Oh, okay.
until-
Not for this fiscal.
So in each fiscal
Which-
year,
$100,000
which starts
in
June,
this fiscal
July 1st, the voluntary payment comes in late March, early to late April, maybe early May.
Okay.
There's never, this isn't a perpetual guarantee, by the way. We've been
Right.
fortunate.
Right.
And if I can make a comment to you here, Mary, that college enrollment is declining in many areas, particularly in this region, and voluntary payments may be tied into a declining enrollment. So the president of Quinnipiac and I are having regular conversations about that.
Okay.
I didn't count that against your time.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was another comment I had.
I was only-
If the board or the chair chooses to answer a question, does it get taken away from the residents' 5-minute time?
There's,
It doesn't, okay, all right.
Nancy, there's not going to be a stopwatch.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, Mary.
Mary, yeah.
Mary, yeah. You're on the other side.
This is what they're- okay.
It's not, there's no stopwatch.
Okay,
But
good.
I just want people to be reasonable.
Okay, so does anybody have a memory as to how much that voluntary payment from Quinnipiac was? Not an exact penny, but,
564,000, of which roughly 64,000 was put towards a major project over at Ridge Road. The balance is, we calculate $300,000 as revenue every year, so for the sake of this Board of Finance, it's a $300,000 payment that fulfills the budgetary amount in the budget of $300,000.
okay. So there was discussion in the past about some of this voluntary payment being allocated to the fire department for the training facility. Is that for this fiscal year and not the past, not the payment that we had?
That's a good question. And there is money allocated towards the firefighter training facility. However, what we once thought would cover the cost of that, the chief is working to find out what the true costs are, so nothing's been spent against that.
Okay, so we're not aware of what the true cost is at this time?
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right. So I have a future expenditure question. So regarding the $2 million bonding package for the elementary school security, if approved by the town meeting, what will be the source of the payments? Will it come out of the general fund, the fund balance? Hopefully not a mill rate increase. And when would it start? Those payments start?
So we're going to be calling a town meeting. Ed and I are working on this with Valerie here. If the public approves it, we'll be making presentations. We sort of talked about that earlier. It would be bonded, and then it would be booked as debt service over the 17 or 20 years.
So it'd be minimal impact.
Minimal impact.
Minimal
Zero
impact.
impact to the mill rate.
Okay.
Pretty much zero.
So it's bonding $2 million over
Yeah, 2
17
million over
years,
17
which
years
is,
on a $100 million budget.
right, it's not going to make an
You're not
impact.
going to see it.
bond back, that can't
Yeah.
zero.
Yeah, it can't be
Yeah, but
zero, right.
it's, but no, I mean, it's basically, it's an insignificant change. It's not going to affect the
I
mill
can
rate.
guarantee you, it will not affect the mill rate. That's a
Yeah.
guarantee.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sherman?
Sherman Katz, Sherwood Drive. Lived in this town for 51 years. Very proud of North Haven. After what you said about this 5 minutes, I've toned down what I want to say. What I wanted to say was not very nice. I'll only give you a little bit of it, and it's still under 5 minutes. I remember in days long ago, the public would fill the rooms of various board meetings. I guess television has changed this, and in some cases, speakers were embarrassed by members of the boards. So we have fewer people that come to the microphone now. I was going to go over a list of people that decided what you should and shouldn't, what you can and can't say. It's a very long list, but I'll just say there are two people in particular, Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler. They restricted speech. One of them even burned books to try and wipe out the religious history of a people. It doesn't work. It never works to restrict the speaking of people. Mr. Frieda instituted a rule at the Board of Selectmen meeting that he would stay as long as he had to in order to satisfy the public. I've attended hundreds of meetings and don't remember any meeting lasting many extra hours due to public comment. I do remember meetings running longer due to board members' comments and questions. Maybe you should limit board members to 5 minutes or 6 minutes. I don't have any questions to ask tonight. I just wanted to express my feelings about the freedom of speech that we have here. I don't think 5 minutes is enough in some cases, and in some cases, 5 minutes is too much. But I asked a question about, for instance, at the budget workshops, why public comment is not allowed. And you told me that you decided not to allow it because it would confuse the board members.
No, I didn't so much say it would confuse board members. I don't allow public comments at workshops because information's being presented to board members. It takes several meetings before all the information is presented. I don't want board members drawing conclusions after fire or after police until all the departments have had a chance to present their viewpoint and their needs. We have the meeting in the auditorium of the high school, which is a Board of Finance meeting, technically, the annual town budget, where public spends 4 hours on public comment.
By then, it's too late. I
It's not
I
too late,
believe,
because
I
there's
believe, that
another
I have the
meeting
floor, I have the floor, sir. I believe that the public, some people in the public have valid, good questions that you board members might not even think of. I'm not talking about frivolous questions, real valid questions. Maybe if they submitted it to you first, and you could say yes or no after at least seeing what the question is. And that was an objection I had, I still have it. And that's all I'm going to say tonight. Thank you.
Sally?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Sally Buemi, 5 Blossom Drive. Wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you, Mr.
Merry
Chairman,
Christmas.
and to all of your fellow board members. Also, I wanted to welcome Mrs. Barrett to the Board of Finance, and I wish you well as you fulfill your obligations of your oath of office. I just wanted to jump in on a couple of points that 2 board members made during your discussions of the reports. First, Mr. Leonis's concerns or question about whether inspections create revenue. Mr. Frieda accurately answered that we don't get revenue from inspections. And I just wanted to just make it very clear, the plan review is, again, Mr. Frieda was correct that it's really called on our revenue report, the fire fees. That's what you see on the second page of the revenue report on its fire fees, is for plan reviews of new construction. I just wanted to add that. New construction or renovation. Whereas inspections are the 1 to 4 year statutory required inspections for existing businesses.
Yes.
So that's the biggest differentiation that I just wanted to add on to Mr. Frieda's correct description. And the fire fees, you asked how much. We earn $8 per $1,000 of construction cost, and it's billed through the building department. And I think that, and I've mentioned this many times before, you will notice on your special funds report on the bottom where it says fire inspections, it's reporting year-to-date $230,774. That's the same exact figure year-to-date on the second page of your revenue report under fire fees. So once again, maybe to try to help eliminate the confusion, if you could put on the special revenue report fire fees instead of fire inspections, it would help eliminate Mr. Leonis's confusion about whether inspections earn revenue, because if you look at that document. You did. Well, congratulations. Finally, I've been asking you to do that for a long time. Thank you. And I wanted to follow up on Mrs. Barrett's question about page 14 of the expenditure budget, the track, Vanacore Field track being at 120%, because that also caught my eye, and I had inquired about it. That, if I may say, that $67,000 original appropriation was based on we outsource a contractor that handles everything for Vanacore Field and the track for events and for getting the field ready for football games and track meets and whatnot. Anything within that fenced area is handled, is contracted out, and that contract had to be renewed in July, and it went up from 67,000 to 78, and also the lights had to be repaired, and that shed within the fenced area had to be demolished. So that helps to, I just wanted to add that as further explanation of why that line is so high at 120%, only 40% into the fiscal year. So I had done my own inquiry on that, so I wanted to throw that in there. And I also wanted to talk about the fire department. I was at the fire commission meeting last night, and they approved promotions of 4 lieutenants to 4, they are now captains. And at a special meeting of the fire commission on November 19th, they approved the promotion of 4 firefighters to 4 lieutenants. And these promotions will be effective December 30th at a swearing-in ceremony. And the chief reported that the increased salaries that these captains will get, now that they're captains rather than lieutenants, is already in the budget. So during public comment, I asked the chief, where in the budget is that? Because I did not see captains listed on page 42 of the budget, which is the employment table of the fire department. It had chief, deputy chief, assistant chief, 4 lieutenants, and then 30, or in parentheses, 32 firefighters, because we're hiring 2 mid-year this year. There were no captains. And he said, go ask Mr. Monaco. So
Really? That's interesting.
And I said, wow, you're going to love this, because lots of times I come before you and you tell me to go ask him stuff. So I said, well, all right. So where in the budget, if I may ask, is the money, the extra money for 4 captains at a higher salary, above and beyond the $3,118,000?
It's under contractual obligations where I put the unsettled contract amount of 2.5% per year. It's included in that figure. I think it's like $370,000. And within that is money that is set aside for the increase for the captains.
Okay, I always thought contractual obligations was for renewal of contracts. This is not renewals of contracts.
No, but
this
I
is a
never
promotion.
restricted it just to that, it's just.
Okay. And so again, you think it's okay to change the employment table in mid-fiscal year?
It's a promotion. People get step increases all the time in contracts.
Right, but this isn't
People can
in
get
their
promotions
contracts.
as well.
Right. But, well, the union contracts have their percentage increases every year. Those are built in to the full-time personnel line items in our budgets for each department.
Right.
And then for the union contracts that we know that we're going to be negotiating, we have the contractual obligation line to cover for when we renew. We have to do the back pay always, and we have to come up with a lump sum for the retroactive pay
Right.
from when the last contract expired to the new date. So I understand that that's what contractual obligations is for. I didn't think that it was for promotions, because that is not in the union contract.
Well, I just put it in
Okay.
the budget, and that's where it
All
ended
right,
up. So.
right. Well, I just, again, I challenge that. I continue to maintain that you cannot change the employment table in mid-fiscal year, as we did last year when we hired 2 firefighters. And I just wanted to make one more point, and that is the following. Mr. Chairman, a couple of times in the past few years, I've challenged the expenditure of MRSA money on items not in the budget. In 2016, $692,000 of MRSA money was spent on 4 items not in the budget, and I challenged that, not necessarily whether we needed it or not, but the process. I thought it should have gone through Board of Finance and or town meeting. And a few months ago, when we had the reconciliation of the MRSA for the 18-19 fiscal year, you might recall in the lower left corner of the special revenue documentation, there was a list of a bunch of expenditures that MRSA was used for of about $1 million. And I kept citing to you Section 7-348 of the Connecticut General Statutes as support of my position that those expenditures cannot be made without a town meeting. And in fact, 3 years ago, I approached the bench and gave you a copy of the statute, which basically says that the town cannot obligate itself beyond what's in the budget without legislative authority. So I'm bringing this up for this reason. I was researching some old Board of Selectmen minutes for another research project that I was working on, and I came across the minutes from October 1st of 2009. And at that time, Mr. Frieda was the third selectman. Again, this was October 1st, 2009. I have the minutes here. And during public comment, one citizen was talking about the need for a town meeting to approve some expenditures. And Mr. Frieda is quoted here, and I will give the quote, Mr. Frieda stated that we should have a town meeting before the money is spent in excess of $20,000, citing Connecticut State Statute 7-348. And I almost fell off my chair, because here is Mr. Frieda referencing the same exact statute that I have been arguing to you that we need town meetings for, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I want to comment, because
Okay.
she's telling you half the story. The other half of the story is, what's changed is the state has given us a grant for MRSA. We didn't have that back in 2009. She's right, Sally's right in what she's saying. That did happen, and I remember it like it was yesterday. But when OPM at the state level gives us $1,445,000, and they monitor how the money's to be spent, and we have to get permission for them, that's the permission we need, or else we're not going to get that grant. So we are in total compliance with OPM at the state level in terms of how to manage that money. The auditors sanction it, and the rating agencies endorse it. That's the difference between October 1st, 2009 and 2019, 10 years later. We are under strict guidelines from the state in terms of how to spend that money. And most recently, under Governor Lamont's administration, it's changed. No longer can we use MRSA for vehicles, public works vehicles, like we did. We can only use MRSA for drainage and road projects. That's the difference between today and October of 2009.
I would agree with you, except for one thing. MRSA is not a grant. It is a regular revenue line item in our budget, which supports all of the expenditures in our budget. So you have revenue line items that total $103 million for this budget cycle, and you have expenditures that total the exact same amount. The $1.4 million from MRSA is not a grant. It is a revenue line item that supports the expenditures in our budget.
Wow.
And so if you use that money for items that are not in the budget, in my opinion, based on 704 and 707 of our town charter and 7-348 of the Connecticut General Statutes, it should go before a town meeting. And once again, I'm not challenging whether or not we should have purchased those items. I probably would have supported most of them. I'm challenging the process. Thank you.
So, although I disagree with you, let me share what the good news is.
Yes.
The good news is, because the state has changed the rules, we're not going to be doing it that way anymore. So
Okay.
no more vehicles that are going to be expended.
So what am I going to complain about now?
What are you gonna
Oh,
complain
boy.
about?
I'll find something else.
Okay,
Thank you for
very
your
good.
time and attention, and Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, motion to adjourn?
Make that motion.
Second? All in favor?
See you Sunday.
We're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.